Hi, my name is David, and I'm super excited to have you on my show today. Answers is that platform that helps you get clarity to your faith-based questions and equips you to share your faith. 1 Peter 3:15 says, always be ready to give a defense to everyone who has asked you for the hope in which you believed in with meekness and fear. I'm trusting that by the end of this show, you'll be better informed and God will heal every doubt in your heart. In the name of Jesus. Let's go.
And we're talking about thousands of years in between, or like about 1,000 years or so in between all of the accounts recorded in the Bible, and not a single place is there a contradiction, a contradiction that puts a fault on the objective focus point of the Bible, right? You can find many verses, one verse, two verses, out of how many verses of the Bible where you say this contradicts this. I promise you, with proper, if you sit down with a theologian, if you sit down with a Bible scholar, they will explain to you why this is this, right?
How do you guys confirm the resurrection claims of Jesus? This is interesting. The Quran references him as a prophet and not a resurrected Messiah. I think a few of his friends just came together to write stuff about him. So I'm guessing this is saying the accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are his friends. So
writing nice stuff about him.
They just came together to say, "Oh, Jesus resurrected from the dead," because that's where it's that's where it contradicts the Quran for him. So that means this person is
maybe a Muslim,
or validates the.
Or maybe it's comparing the
Quran and the Bible together. Yeah. So
okay, so I think in the history of mankind, I've never seen or heard of where friends of a person will come together to say nice things that the person came back from the dead. That's not within the spectrum of nice things to say. It's not. Nobody ever thinks to say about their friend that the person came back, because nobody comes back from the dead. People die. You know, if anybody comes back from the dead, which people have in history, it's called a miracle, and it's usually something that happens during the period that they've died, apart from the recorded incident of Lazarus, who was dead 4 days, right? Which I believe Jesus did for a reason, to show that he had power over death. But this is not a sermon, so let me not even get into that. But generally, when people die in hospital, pronounced medically dead for 2 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, pronounced medically dead, and then they come back to life, the doctors will call it a miracle, because as far as the doctors were concerned and what they saw, the person died. There was no heartbeat any longer, right? So nobody would conceive something nice to say and think that far, because it's not a normal thing. It's not a natural thing, all right? Bear in mind that Jesus Christ he had said both directly and indirectly that he was going to die and be resurrected three days after. And in the case of other people who died in the Bible, as recorded in the Bible, somebody went to resurrect them. You know, the 12-year-old girl who was asleep and everybody was mourning, Jesus went there to wake her up. Lazarus, Jesus went to wake him up. The son of the widow who housed Elijah, Elijah went, stretched his body over the body, woke him up. Jesus Christ was resurrected without the interference of anybody, without the interference of any prophet, pastor, apostle, whatever you may want to call it, right? And so he had said that this was going to happen, both directly and indirectly, to his disciples. And they either didn't believe him or didn't even understand what he was saying. Let me not say they didn't believe him. They didn't understand what he meant. Like, in fact, at the point, Peter told him, don't say such things. Like, probably saying, stop when you speak negative. Like, don't speak negative things. You know.
How you say you die? No.
At the time of the death, when the death was actually happening, all the disciples ran. They were nowhere to be found. You know, I think only at the cross where the brothers of Jesus were with Mary and a few other followers and everything, but the disciples of Jesus Christ, Peter, for example, ran away because this was life and death that they were talking about. Like, nobody takes life and death lightly. Now, the Pharisees and the religious leaders who are determined that Jesus Christ was a heretic, saying that he was going to raise himself from the dead and everything, they ensured that no hanky-panky could happen. When he was buried, they sealed the tomb. You may want to do a bit of research on what the sealing of a tomb meant back in that day, right? The stones they would use were heavy, and it's called sealing. They sealed the tomb, right? Yeah, it's not, and they didn't stop there. They put guards. They put Roman guards to guard the tomb.
And don't forget, Roman guards are key. So they know when somebody's really dead.
The Roman guards, before he even came down from the cross, bear in mind, nobody can be crucified and survive it. Crucifixion is not, even if you are brought down while alive, you can't survive crucifixion. Like, it's nails through your wrists. Once you cut this place like this, you know how quickly people who want to commit suicide, they cut this place and they know how quickly they're going to die. You bleed out. There were nails in his 2 wrists. He had been flogged. He had been pierced. Professional Romans. Historically, the whip they used, it had tiny ball bells. It had spikes. The ball bells will soften the skin surface so that the spikes can get in and really penetrate and bring out blood. So it was a very, very terrible experience to have been flogged with such a wicked instrument. And by the way, going back in history, the Romans were some of the most creative people in terms of inflicting pain. They were some of the, I can't remember the document now, but I found a document talking about some of the most cruel ways that the Romans executed people. My God, those guys were crazy. So he died on that cross.
They pronounced you dead.
He was judged, as in the judgment, or he was already judged, and the execution was given as a judgment. So there was no way for that to have been cut short. The death would have been confirmed before he was released to Joseph of Arimathea. It's like in the court now, and they say that somebody they sentence someone to death by lethal injection. There's a doctor there to confirm that, the job has been done and the person is dead, right? So he was confirmed dead. He was buried, embalmed, buried, and sealed in the tomb. And not just that, they didn't stop there. They put guards to guard the tomb. So people who say, for example, that he never resurrected, they stole his body, how do you expect that fishermen, a tax collector, random people from different random regular walks of life where Jesus picked his disciples from, would have been able to just sneak into the scene and then overpower Roman guards who they ran away from when Jesus was being crucified, and then break the seal of the tomb and then bring Jesus out? It's not possible. It's just not possible. And the first person to have even witnessed the open tomb was a woman. So how exactly would his body have been stolen? How exactly would the friends have come up and say, hey guys, let's say something nice about Jesus so that people will believe us. Let's say that when he was killed, he rose from the dead. And then, don't you think that by the time persecution started, because historically all of the apostles apart from John the Beloved were killed brutally.
Yeah, brutal. Everyone. That's what I'm trying to say on the other point. The fact that the way they died, you would have said, oh, sorry, we were lying.
They didn't shoot them. They didn't stab. They didn't just take a knife and stab. Many of them, one of the apostles was dragged by a horse across the city. And I'm sure they didn't have tarred roads then. If it was even tarred roads, you would still suffer a great deal. But it was dragged with a horse. And you can't even imagine what that must have felt like. Stephen was stoned twice. Apostle Paul was stoned once. They thought he died. That's why they left him there. They thought they had stoned him to death. They were killed all sorts of brutal ways. Now, if what they were all saying was a lie, when the first story had come out, bro, do you hear about Peter? Hey, do you hear what they did to Peter? I beg, I know they do. Like, what motive would there be to continue to propagate a nice story that is false about Jesus who has already died and gone. He's not there to reward your loyalty. He's not there to say, my guy, you did my back.
You already seen how one of your apostles died.
You've heard the story, the brutal death. How then would you continue saying what you know is a lie? And just like what David mentioned here, where Peter said, we can't deny the things we have seen. Listen, after the first person to witness the empty tomb went and told people, many of them did not even believe. Jesus appeared to them. Jesus dwelt with these people. There were many of them, and he was with them for 40 days. Talking to them, he was eating with them, he was chilling with them, and in their very before, like Pidgin English should say, he ascended into the sky and wasn't seen again.
I want to add 1 Corinthians 15 verse 6. It says, after that he appeared, let me start from 5, and that he appeared to Cephas and then to the 12. After that he appeared to more than 500 brothers at once.
500 people.
Most of whom are still living at that time.
At the time
those some, Corinthians. Those some had fallen asleep.
Sorry, at the time of the writing of the letter to the Corinthians. So there we have it.
500. It could be. Some people say, okay, maybe dreams. 500 people at once cannot be. Everybody can be dreaming at the same time. And if they all have the same dream, that means the source of the dream is even worth looking at. If one
500 people can
dream about,
you would think
there's something. The matrix.
Yes, like a matrix or something. And if there's a matrix that's capable of simulating one dream for 500 people, that matrix is what
looking at.
Giving some respect to, because that is no mean feat. That's no average thing.
So, yes, I think
we confirmed resurrection because
eyewitness accounts
of people who saw,
and they were ready to die, and they were ready to die for what they say they've seen,
and they passed it on from generation.
Thank you so much, PTR. Okay, next question says, I've heard that the Bible has been changed over and over again. Please help me clarify. Has the Bible been changed, or has it been translated? This change means maybe some people said, okay, these are the books we'll take in the Bible, and then tomorrow another set of books, and then another set of things. Is that person trying to find out, has the Bible been changed over and over? Is that what has happened, or has it been translated? Because then we say, okay, it was given in Hebrew and Aramaic, Greek, and then. So is it a translation, or has it been a change? I think this is what the person wants to find out.
All right. So it's a very, very good question because any foundational theology will tell you that the Bible was not written in English. It was probably not even written. It wasn't even written in chapters and verses, right? These things were these things are just the labor of theologians and Bible scholars to make what was originally obtained a lot easier to understand, a lot easier to read. I think English is definitely the most popular language in the world today, and so it only makes sense that at the time when the Bible was first translated into English, it was done with the view to make it more accessible in line with the language that was becoming, the most prevalent language in the world. And so the Bible was written in Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, and very simple answer, really. It's just like, let me bring back the books, or maybe Harry Potter series, right? Harry Potter is sold in many different kinds of cover books, many different kinds of paperback cover, hardcover back, different kinds of fonts, different kinds of pages, different kinds of letter spacing, page spacing, and all of that. But at the end of the day, across board, the text remains the same. And there is nobody who represents the author, whether the author herself or anybody that represents the author, that is saying this was not in the original manuscript. So for every generation in which the Bible has existed, there were those who existed during the passing on, and those who existed on the other end of the passing on. That's those who handed on the baton and those who collected it. And neither group have ever argued on the authenticity of the text, right? we have the Bible translated from Greek to English, from Hebrew to English. There are Hebrew Christians, there are Greek Christians. There are Christians who speak Aramaic, and nobody of those who have obtained the original text, because many people have sought the original text, travel all over the world to look for the original manuscripts, as many of it as has been preserved, right? And in some cases, maybe there have been some that the original from thousands of years ago was not preserved, and they just made like a new copy of the exact same thing, word for word, bar for bar, just so that they can keep a semblance of what was back then, because we're talking about almost 4,000 years ago. How many materials can really survive that long, no matter how carefully you keep it? Because at the end of the day, to still move through civilization changes, through wars, through reorganization of geography and all of that, it will move. And from movements, wear and tear, you may not have the original manuscript, but the fact that there were people who existed when it was being handed over, and those who existed when it was given. And nobody has in the past ever come out to say, or to the best of my knowledge, if you can find, bring. But one of the things you see is that these things, when people just say these things, it's like regurgitated statements that nobody really has any founded proof of. It's just like, surely it must have been. Okay, but no Greek Christian is that I know or that I've heard of is saying that, the original Greek for the New Testament contradicts the English that we have in the Bible. Where we have maybe one or two little issues would just be some words that are translated, maybe like, for example, where Jesus says, "Behold, I give unto you power to tread upon serpents and scorpions." And the original Greek in that word there, the power there actually meant authority. Because you can have the power to do some things and not have the authority to do it. So other versions, other translations of that will help you clarify. That's it. But at the end of the day, there is no grand major disparity between all of these accounts that would make you know that, okay, there's been a mistranslation anywhere. There is nothing that proves that there was a mistranslation. Who would mistranslate and why? For what reason? Lack of knowledge, lack of enough understanding, or what? Okay, there are other versions, other translations. Everything still converges at the same point.
The point to the fact that we still have resources where you can see the original Greek word. So you might not agree with the translation. You can still go and check, okay, what was the Greek word used, or what was the Hebrew word used, and then look for the meaning. Do your own research and look for the meaning of this Hebrew word to get the real meaning. Yeah.
Some might even still discredit those materials you're pointing to. That, is it not people that put that out there? How do you know that even the material you are referencing is not false? Well, how do we know that anything is not false? History is presented to us, passed down to us. You can't do anything about it. It's what people tell you that they saw, or that they read about, or that they heard, that they will tell you. And that's how history is created. It's literally history. Things that are told to you about things that occurred before by people who occurred when those things, the people who existed when those things occurred. So,
but for us, it has moved from head knowledge to an experience.
Of course.
You get so that's another what you said earlier when we started. So we've moved from we've seen it come to life. So I think the history is enough because of the experience that has said you are going to experience this, and we've experienced it. So then that on its own is a lot of validity to it. But even with just the head knowledge, there are things we call manuscripts. Manuscripts in those days, you don't have like a printer that prints a lot of copies. So it means everybody had to write it down. If I want to have a copy, and when the law was given to them, to the children of Israel, they had to. You tell kings to come and write it down from the temple. You write down the commandments and take it on your own. So manuscript existed because everybody had to write their own version. And so when they found manuscripts in a particular location, they saw the fact that they matched each other. That means this person wrote the same thing, this person wrote, this person wrote the same thing, this person wrote. And then they could even confirm parts that, this one has been destroyed here. Okay, can I find that destroyed part in this person's manuscript? It's just like when you write, when in secondary school and you don't go to class and maybe you are looking for the class note. You get, and then someone's writing is so bad here that I can't see this person's writing well. You check what another person wrote. You get, then you can come up with the proper notes. So I think in terms of history, the validity, I think, is even the most reliable and the oldest source of material we have. It's very old and very trustworthy when you look at the fact that it doesn't contradict itself.
Yeah, so, and I think there's even an example that came to mind. There's this, I've forgotten exactly where it is, but there was this group of people, I think it's an Asian country, but they were in a country where Christians were being heavily persecuted. And so for a period of time, they lived like in caves. And in that country, the Bible was prohibited. And so one of them, I think, before being able to find his way into refuge with the rest of them in the cave, he had to memorize the entire Bible. I think, it wasn't one. I think there were a couple of them. So they memorized the entire Bible so that they can preserve it, because what they had in their possession, they knew that there was a possibility that they would lose it because of how much the Christian faith was being persecuted, and the Bible was being it was like heavy contraband. And so when they found themselves with those other Christians, it was a big relief to those ones because they had no Bible. But now they had people who literally could bring out the Bible from their heads, and maybe they would even now write it down. And then later, whichever ones of them found themselves once, maybe they were able to escape from that place and go to a place where they had some more liberty. You can check and verify. So there's been many cases of verifications of all the different translations and the changes you might think have happened, and there's no contradiction, which means there's no change. The same thing has been preserved. And remember what I said, the Christians who carried the Bible from age to age, they did so with reverence and honor. It was something that was handed over to them by people who told them that this thing was bigger than themselves. Yes. And the people who first started handing it over, they died for it. And so there's a great reverence and honor that comes with the way it has been carried on. And that gives us very strong reason to believe that it is credible. This when the scripture that some believers believe Paul uses to advocate, or Peter uses to advocate for women not to wear jewelry, where he says, don't adorn yourself with jewelry and with clothes. So if he's saying don't wear jewelry, is he saying don't wear clothes?